Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our third event in our Future.Now Digital Skills Week. I'm delighted to be welcoming Debbie Forster from Tech Talent Charter to join us this afternoon on this hour-long discussion around tools. Those of you who are part of the Future.Now network will know that when we launched back in October, one of the things that we published was a digital directory of over 200 digital skills initiatives, and it showed the breadth of activities that were out there, and it gave a little bit of an indication of where some of the gaps were and where some of the opportunities are for collaboration. And it's an area that we are very interested in doing more. We really want to understand, whether there's appetite to have a digital skills toolkit, what challenges that would help us overcome in the digital skills arena, and on a more practical level, what format would be useful. So to move that conversation forward, we thought we'd use this event today to really explore an example of a toolkit in practice that will act as a way of perhaps inspiring us all and our thought processes around what we might want to do in the digital skills space. And this will be part of a bigger piece of work that we're already working on, which is an employer's playbook, which is all of resources that to help people advancing digital skills within their workforces. So with no more ado, really, I'd like to introduce Debbie. Debbie is the CEO of Tech Talent Charter, and the piece of work that she's going to share with you today is their diversity and inclusion open playbook that many organizations are using. I think you'll find it very inspiring. I've asked Debbie to both lay out the objectives behind it, but also give us an opportunity to really see it in practice before we then take some time on our tables to really explore what that might mean for us from a digital skills perspective. So Debbie, let me hand over to you now, please.
Thanks, Liz. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to join you here today. I thought what I'll do today is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the charter and what our thinking was before we set up our toolkit, and then we'll give you a chance to have a look at it yourself. As you heard at the start, if for any reason you've got any questions, you're welcome to share them here, but you'll also see a Twitter handle that you can send to us, and we'd be happy to answer that offline. If you've not heard of the Tech Talent Charter before, we're a not-for-profit organization. We're now a movement of over 450 organizations of every size, from every sector, coming to inequality in the UK tech sector and to drive inclusion and diversity in a practical and measurable way. What we really believe, and it's very much the sort of thinking that you have at Future.Now, this is too big a problem for any single organization to be able to work and solve themselves. So we work at scale. We look at the tech ecosystem as a whole, everything from what we need to do in schools up to getting women into boards, and we focus on the how. We don't hold endless roundtable events on why there are no women in tech, why we're not a diverse workforce. What we do is we look at that how, bringing them together so that we can connect the dots, not to reinvent the wheel. And with that focus that we have on action, not talk, we have some key activities. One of them is obviously bringing together, know who's who in the space, getting them working together and collaborating. Relevant to today, what we wanted the companies to do was to debate and discuss and share what works and what that became a key part of our toolkit that we'll talk about today, which is the open playbook of next best practice. We also understood, like you, not everyone knew doing what in the space. So we began a directory of who was working all the way across. We have over 500 initiatives now that are mapped up and down the country. Again, another free tool that we share. And finally, we're companies to join, but they do share data with us annually. We take that data, it's anonymized, it's aggregated, that's brought together into our annual report, which has some great thought leadership, but again, thinking of that focus on the how and the practical, it gives our companies benchmarking tools so they can sit down internally at that C-level suite to look at where they're ahead and behind the game to really move things on. Now, we began formally in 2017, and one of the things we knew that we needed to do was to look on this practice. How do we help people understand and build on what's already in the place? From the start, we knew guiding objectives for this playbook. First and foremost, it was a signposting tool. We were not the expert in the space. We did not pretend that there was any single magic bullet. We knew that we had a range of companies from sectors to different sizes, different regions, different starting points. And so we had to have something that pointed to things rather than trying to be comprehensive. But it was important that we curated it. What we wanted to do is not have this as a sales shop where people are trying to sell goods to someone else, but actually something that our employers told us would work. So we have that curated list when we talk about our open playbook that contains tools, guides, thought leadership pieces that our employers coming together say works. Really, 2 points that are important is that it had to be free for all of our members to use. It had to be easily accessible, whatever your company size, whatever your firewalls that you had to get through. And it had to be simple to maintain. We'd seen in the past a lot of great pieces of content put together that as soon as it was launched began getting old, getting stale, be out of date. And so we needed something that was easy for us to keep current and moving forward. And we needed it to be able to be easily expanded over time. Start small, figure out what works, and then to scale from there. When we looked at our first version of the Open Playbook back in 2017, we had to keep it simple. So in the first instance, we focused on interventions. What were the things, the actions, the initiatives that companies told us worked? We didn't take the time to look at resources in that first instance. We just needed to hear and create that overarching set of actions that companies could take on anything within the pipeline, whether that is how to build a more inclusive culture, how to recruit better, how to retain better, how to build retraining schemes, returner schemes. We wanted to make sure that we gathered it from them. So we took some light touch ways of gathering that content. Our members shared things with us online via emailing it to us or on LinkedIn. We also held events, practical working breakfasts, where people gathered around the table to talk through ideas and capture those. We took as a guiding principle really light touch in the first year. We wanted to keep it as easy to fix as possible so that we could actually test what did our members want, what was useful, what was not, what was functioning, what wasn't. And I have to say, first, and the biggest guiding principle, if you've been in this space, we've been in a dozen different discussions, haven't we, about one big platform. Let's put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into building one great platform. If I had a pound for every great platform idea that came through in this space, we would be able to be a for-profit piece. So really, in that first year, we created it just as a Google Doc. Really simple, really light touch, just to see what people thought and what people wanted. The feedback was great. We had more and more initiatives that were shared with us. We had more companies asking things with us. We had some complaints from corporates who couldn't get into Google. So we decided to work then at the end of 2019 on our version 2 of the Open Playbook. So first, as I said, we had to make it easier for users, both in terms of in the cloud, but also thinking about how, when we had so much content, could we make it easier for a newcomer to the space, a company who's new, trying to figure out how to become more inclusive, how to get better at recruiting women, where and how could they go, giving that maps. We wanted to make it an easier interface. That was so that anyone could be helping us to add and amend content. We did want more explanation, and we made the decision it was time. We were ready, tagging, hyperlinking to resources, those toolkits, those guides out there that our employers recommended. We also took the decision to look for a free or nearly free platform, not to build something proprietary. We wanted something that was easy to be built off of by other organizations or to be worked with others that might come into the space. And what we've done in 2019 into 2020, we had promised that we would move beyond just gender. So we're beginning to include other lenses, disability, neurodiversity, ethnicity, etc. How did we achieve it? So what was key to how we did this is it was about working with our key stakeholders. This was employers in the space, from their HR function, from D&I, providers in the space, employers, and actually women themselves. We brought them together first in face-to-face events, and then since COVID, we were able to bring them together on virtual hack days. As we speak, I have a hack session going on with 3 teams of 5 each who are continuing to build another section of our piece. So this is something that carries on, and it's easy for us to do in a light touch, remote way. We chose, in looking after a lot of different platforms, we took it off Google and we moved it into a platform called Notion. It's a free platform, but it does have the opportunity, if we see that it's working well, to create some small paid features that allow greater functionality. We also made sure that it continues to be updated. So for us, you'll see when I give you an actual look at the toolkit itself, you'll see we even have some materials that link into things like how to cope with COVID. So where we have now, we have our second version of the playbook out. We have corporates who are interested in working with us to continue to expand that. We are putting in more sections. So after the current hack days that are going on, you'll see a new section on disability and being a disability-friendly team. We will look at expanding the functionality. We're quite excited that in the techniques and the things that we put on there, that the Notion website will allow users to upvote, to ask comments, questions, to allow this to become a more interactive resource. We are also open. Everything that we do at the Tech Talent Charter is open and free to use from anyone who's trying to help make strides in terms of diversity, inclusion, etc. So we do have a number of partners who we're working with to share the approaches, the formats, the platform in any way that we can. All right, now this is the point where I hold my breath a bit, because I'm going to try and take you into the platform itself. That means I'm stopping sharing. I'm moving across. I'm doing another share screen, biting my nails to see if I get myself in. And I think we are in. All right, so this is just a snapshot, an idea. If you come into the Tech Talent Charter Open Playbook, you'll see that there are a range of topics that you look at. I've just chosen one, quite straightforward: inclusive culture. We give you the different strategies that you can work on, how to get data, develop reward and inclusive leadership, flexible working, been in relation to the last 3 months, making the case internally for change, life cycle, calling out bias, supporting managers, mental health, disability inclusive, and even COVID-19 specific. If you found one that was something that you particularly wanted to look at, for example, she says cursoring up slowly. Let's look at flexible working. All right, it takes you to a section that you can open. As I said, we have some tagging on what it relates to. It gives you a sense of our members came together to try and explain why is creating that flexible culture work search that you can draw and to sell it in internally. You then begin looking at links, hyperlinks that can take you to government recommendations, gives you the strategies that have been recommended, and then very importantly, then we start showing things that companies can just click into. If you want to get a policy to work with and change, if you want to be able to look through, we've got scrolling down. You'll see that there's a lot of information that people can go through, and then there are ways that you can look on what other of our partners have put together, whether it's proactive approaches, 8 ways to build the culture, how to build the culture of trust, and are we really working, etc. So in summary then, the toolkit is a piece in motion. It is something that we are regularly working with stakeholders to put together. And what we've been most delighted by is that the great take-up and the flexibility that it can continue to evolve COVID in a near cost neutral way. What we're hearing from our members is that it's easy to tag into and everything else. So I'm coming up for air. I'm looking to see if we have any other questions or comments coming through, and then I'm going to put you into table discussions. So this is how we did it in Tech Talent Charter. It was something that came from what our members told us they wanted. It focused on the practical. It brought together rather than creating content. And it's something that we together at very low cost and able to maintain. You have a similar challenge in trying to understand how you can help your members, particular SMEs, to move forward. So we're going to put you discussions. We're going to ask you to discuss 3 questions, and then we'll ask a few of your table representatives to raise issues to comment on for the rest of the group. Then there'll be any time left for Q&A, and if you want to stay after. So when we put you into groups, we're going to ask you to talk about 3 things, and we'll remind you partway through, because we know how easy it is to get into one comment and not be able to cover it all. The first thing I want to ask you to think about at your tables, are there parallels? In what ways are you similar or different to what we had to face at the Tech Talent Charter? And secondly, what do you think about the approach? Are there things about it that don't seem to fit for Future.Now? Are there certain things that you'd like to take in different directions, or are there things that you'd like to do in a similar way? And last but not least, who do you involve? We, for example, at the Charter made sure that we had big corporates, SMEs, and startups, that we had the consultants, the quote unquote experts in the space. So who are those key stakeholders? If you were going to put together a similar toolkit for Future.Now, who needs to be around those tables to bring that together? So we're going to put you out to tables now. Start with that first one. In what ways is it like us that you might want to use? Then we'll remind you to go on to the differences and who would the stakeholders be. Right? Over to you and to our experts to put you onto the tables.